Good afternoon, Mark Sudduth, HurricaneTrack.com, here with your Hurricane Pro and Hurricane HD video blog for Tuesday, May 21st, 2013. Here we are in the last third of the month, the May 21st through 31st time period, and I looked at this yesterday. I thought it was worth taking a look at again today. We see quite a bit more activity here in the Southeast Pacific than we do here in the Atlantic Basin, with a concentration of what we do have over climatology concentrated mainly in the Northwest Caribbean Sea and extreme southeast Gulf of Mexico. Now, last year we did have Alberto and Beryl that formed in this region from different sources rather than tropical waves, and those became subtropical, and then eventually Beryl became a tropical storm as it came into northern Florida there. But climatologically speaking, most of the activity that we're going to see this time of year and as we get into June should be focused in the Caribbean Sea and or the Gulf of Mexico. In fact, if we look at the NOAA climatology and prevailing tracks map, the blue areas where we're most likely to see development as we start the month of June, and then the green area is a little bit more likely, especially considering you get fronts that like to drape down through the region, and sometimes that leaves an upper level disturbance behind or a low level trough. A combination of those things and warm Gulf waters, you can get development. So this is where we start in the month of June, is this region, and as you know, things will spread out across the Atlantic Basin so that eventually the entire Atlantic, even up in the subtropics here, will be favorable for development. It just takes time for the sea surface temperatures, as we see here, to warm, and the sun every day putting that extra energy into the ocean. It's stored as heat in the ocean, and the deeper that heat extends down beyond the surface, the more ocean heat content there is, and we'll take a look at that in a minute. So the current sea surface temperatures, this is the 80 degree line right here, roughly 80 degrees, 26 degrees Celsius. So a good deal of the tropical Atlantic out here already warm enough for development. So why don't we look between Africa and the Lesser Antilles here this time of year? A big part of it is the wind shear, the strong upper level winds that are still way too fast blowing out of the southwest usually. That has to relax substantially, and that doesn't happen until later in the season as the westerlies, as we call them, retreat to the north, and then you get this large area of easterly winds blowing across the tropics at all levels, and that allows these tropical waves to come off of Africa and organize without being torn apart by winds blowing in the opposite direction, that wind shear. That's not good for tropical cyclone formation, and typically at the end of May into June, this is the region that's most favorable for something to develop, even though, and it's worth pointing out, it's pretty rare. You don't get it every single year, and so we're not looking for a prolific uptick in development just because it's June 1st, which is now just 10 days away. So I was talking about ocean heat content. This will play a big role this hurricane season, as it does every season, but I think more so this year because the atmosphere looks like it's going to be conducive for stronger hurricanes, and then we're going to have to look and see what the ocean can contribute. Now, I mentioned that the water temperature needs to be right around 80 degrees Fahrenheit at the surface. The deeper that 80 degree line, or what we call the isotherm, goes into the ocean, the more heat content there is available. You can imagine a hurricane coming along and it churns up the water along its path. Well, if there's colder water below the surface, maybe the surface is 85 degrees, but just 10, 20 feet down, if the water is substantially cold, or it's able to draw colder water off of a landmass shelf water area like South America, the circulation of the storm pulls colder water from that shelf water, which is easier to cool, then it can self-destruct. It sort of loses its steam, quite literally. Whereas if the ocean heat content is deeper, the warm water extends several hundred feet, in some cases 500 feet, down into the ocean, you get a higher ocean heat content value. Therefore, when a storm or hurricane moves across one of these areas with high ocean heat content, it can churn up that water, and it's only bringing up more warm water. And you only have to have 80 degrees or higher to fuel these storms. That's the threshold. So bringing up more 80-degree water or 81 degree or 82 degrees just adds more fuel, and it actually helps to intensify these systems because they can really ramp up to their atmospheric potential. So we'll be watching that closely. Now, this is today's ocean heat content map for the Caribbean Sea. This is Cuba here, this is Hispaniola, and here is Puerto Rico. Notice we do have some oranges and yellows showing up in here, the middle to upper, getting to the upper part of the scale, and then the rest of the Caribbean really filled in nicely with fairly moderate values of ocean heat content. But here's what's striking to me. Take a look at what it looked like this time last year. You see, there was a pretty good area just south of Jamaica, but this area right in here, the Eastern Caribbean, was not filled in at all. If we go back, this is what it looks like now. A much larger aerial coverage of the Caribbean Sea has higher ocean heat content values than we saw last year at this time. So here it is last year, here it is today. So yeah, the hurricane season could be quite busy as the ocean is just a little bit warmer than we're used to seeing, especially as we compare that to last year. So what's going on out there now in the Eastern Pacific or the Atlantic Basin? Well, there's a little area of convection hanging around down the Isthmus of Panama, Costa Rica area. Pretty good convection along the intertropical convergence zone in the Southeast Pacific. But you see these plumes of clouds stretching out. That is indicating to me that there are strong upper level winds still at play, and therefore we really don't see any potential for development. I know it's almost impossible to see. This is the 48-hour current tropical cyclone formation potential map, and there's a little speck of purple right there, and a little bit larger area of purple, very small in comparison to the rest of the globe, right there. So I'm going to outline these two areas in red. Both of those are right here between 2 and 4%. So yeah, you can see it's basically nothing to worry about or monitor in the Atlantic or the Eastern Pacific. So good news there. We know that it's just a matter of time, and so we hope that you are prepared, that you do the things ahead of time to be ready in case a hurricane or a tropical storm, for that matter, comes knocking on your door. Again, I am Mark Sudduth, my website, hurricanetrack.com. It is definitely an honor and a privilege to produce these videos for Hurricane Pro and the iPad version, Hurricane HD. I'll be back to talk to you again tomorrow.